Do you remember the guy that got arrested for the donut? That was me. Are you gonna give me a ticket? I didn't know what was going on. So they came out and they said, okay, we found it.
Methamphetamine, that's a felony arrest. I mean, that's a big deal.
It's glaze from a Krispy Kreme donut.
The last person you think would ever have to spend time in jail.
He's never drank, never smoked his whole life.
I thought it was a prank at first. You have a strip search and everybody's staring at you. Not a fun place.
And they were going to search that car whether he said they could or not. Certainly you would think a police officer would recognize donut glaze.
I don't know what the police are thinking.
It did get a lot of attention.
There was just stories everywhere.
Donut crumbs in his car.
I don't know what's going on. I didn't do anything wrong. My only drug is Krispy Kreme glazed donuts. My name's Daniel Rushing. I'm from Orlando, Florida. You probably know me as the Krispy Kreme guy. Some of my nicknames they come up with for me are Mr. Crispy, the Donut Guy, Krispy Kreme Guy, Mr. Meth, just all kinds of all kinds of names people can come up with. Every other week on a Friday, I would go to Krispy Kreme and get one glazed donut. I only get one every other week because I don't want to gain weight. I mean, I could eat a dozen. They are as addictive as cocaine. If you knew me, I would be the last guy anybody would expect to have crystal methamphetamines in my car. I had just dropped off a friend to chemotherapy treatment. I'm on my way to the gym. I see something in the rearview mirror, it's flashing lights. I'm like, wow, what's that all about? So when the officer came up, then they just stared, and I said, did I do something wrong? You were going 41 and a 30. I went, wow, I didn't realize I did. Are you gonna give me a ticket? I said, well, would you mind if we searched your car? And that's when I said, if you don't give me a ticket, you have my permission to search the car. And they said, okay. So after 10 minutes go by, now I'm starting to get nervous. I'm like, what is taking so long? I don't have anything in the back but just some Bibles that I pass out to homeless people. So they came out and they said, okay, we found it. The officer points to my floorboard on the driver's side and said, that's crystal methamphetamines right there. I said, that's glaze from a Krispy Kreme glazed donut I ate 2 days ago, and I haven't vacuumed the car yet. The officer said I did a drug test, and it came out positive for crystal methamphetamines. I said, do I look like somebody that would take crystal methamphetamines? I thought it was a prank at first, and that's when they said, okay, we'll put your hands behind your back, you're under arrest. I guess it's not a prank.
Yeah, the story almost sounded incredible, but when I investigated, I found out everything he said was true. That day, the Orlando Police Department were doing a drug stakeout and somehow deemed Mr. Rushing suspicious. And they were going to search that car whether he said they could or not. They were going to find a reason. Dan, being a retired City of Orlando employee, said, yeah, search away. Certainly you would think a police officer would recognize donut glaze. It's probably on the front of their uniform.
Yeah, this brings back some unpleasant memories. And in case you forget, this razor wire will remind you where you are. This is 33rd Street, which is Orange County lockup. Everybody that gets arrested in the county comes here. This is where I was brought that day and processed and locked up. You know, 100 people in there making noise, and it's loud, and they do a strip search, which wasn't nearly as fun as I thought it might be. And they took my picture, and it's not a real pleasant experience where you want to put on a big smile or anything like that. Even though I knew I didn't do anything wrong, it's still, it's humiliating and degrading, yeah. I was in jail that day about 11 hours.
Lord, thank you for this food. Please bless it in us. Keep our friends from Vice TV safe, and let everything that they do be successful. In Jesus' name, amen.
So my sister calls me and she's like, Dad's in jail, Dad's in jail. I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Something about drugs or something, and my dad, my dad has never drank, never smoked his whole life. Like,
Paul, my son-in-law, is the one that bailed me out of jail.
I talked to you the next day, kind of briefly, and that was it. We kind of just blew it off, and we didn't really talk about it much after that.
So the next morning, about 8 o'clock, the phone started ringing. I got calls from ABC, CNN, radio stations, television stations. I'd hang up the phone and I'd get an immediate call back. There was just stories everywhere.
Did you hear about the guy who got arrested for meth, but it was Krispy Kreme donut? That's my grandfather, like.
Eventually, the state attorney dropped the charges once the state lab determined that it was not methamphetamine, but donut glaze.
It took me a little while to find Bill. Not many people want to sue the police.
You know, when you arrest somebody for a drug arrest, that's a felony arrest. I mean, that's a big deal. They fought it right to the end. What we were able to show is that the police officer wasn't trained on how to use the test kit, probably used it improperly.
And the officer even admitted, I've never been trained at all on that. And so it came up false positive twice.
The Washington Post did a study where they took these drug test kits, which were sold to the police agencies. They tried all these different household items, and they all came back as false positives, showing the test is just not reliable. It should not be used for the basis of a serious arrest. So we sued the city of Orlando, and I believe we settled for $37,500.
After the officer was deposed by my attorney, the officer said, I'll never believe that wasn't crystal methamphetamines. Some people, you know, they just will never admit if they made a mistake, and I guess that's what that was.
It's not cleared up just because the state drops the charges. You still have an arrest record that it shows you've been arrested for methamphetamine.
Now I'm working out at the airport for a little $10 an hour job just because I haven't had that removed from my record yet.
So he's got that dark cloud over his head until it's cleared up. Things could have been worse for Dan. I mean, if Dan was not the position he was in life, he could have just given up and pled guilty to a lesser charge and wound up with a sentence.
I was happy to be out. I had a big smile on my face. My son-in-law was quite surprised.
And then I said, no, seriously, why are you so happy? And he said, because God put him there, and he got a chance to witness to some people, and he thinks he brought someone to Christ.
I just had a strong feeling in my spirit that the Lord wanted me to talk to one of the other inmates. I said, look, I hardly ever do this, but I had a very strong feeling from the Lord that you need to accept Jesus before it's too late, and he loves you. And then when I left, he yelled at me, hey. I said, yeah. He gave me a thumbs up.
I believe in God. I know that nothing happens to me if he doesn't let it. When I get to heaven, people are going to see me and go, oh yeah, you're the Krispy Kreme guy.